Rest has become something that we're selling. You know, it's self-care now. It's like what you need to buy to look rested. We're missing the core element of it, which is just we need rest, but prolonged rest. The thing with creativity is it is not this constant flow of ideas all the time. Through my life, I've had 3 to 6 month periods where I just can't write anything I like. And I've spent a lot of time beating myself up over the fact that I work that way.
Welcome to The Slowdown, your time to define success and growth for yourself with a little inspiration from others. I'm so excited to share this conversation with musician and songwriter Ellie Dixon. I've followed Ellie for a few years and have been blown away by her talent and thought process. She's unbelievably wise for her years, so I know you'll enjoy this as much as I did. We talk about quality over quantity when it comes to art and success, what to do after burnout, how to build your own music label, and what it means to play Glastonbury on your own terms. Without any further ado, let's dive in. Welcome.
Hello.
I've been following you for years on Instagram, and then you shared this reel that really resonated with me. I was desperate to ask you onto this podcast. I had no idea if you'd say yes because it doesn't even exist yet. It will when this episode comes out, but at the moment of recording, it doesn't exist. And you said yes, and then I saw you in Finsbury Park Station, as luck would have it. Never seen you before in my life, and then suddenly there you were.
Always
and I couldn't miss the opportunity, but I was zipped up in a huge puffer coat with a massive fur hood underneath it, and I just kind of must have looked insane, kind of jumping up to you going, "Hi, my name's Tiana. I'm the girl that's been emailing you about this podcast."
Because you said, I'm interviewing you on the 9th and ran.
Yes.
And the problem is I have such a bad memory for dates that I would have been like, oh my God, hi. But I was like, the 9th of what month? Where am I?
Exactly. But anyway, I'm so glad that we're here in person. I'm so grateful. I'm going to share a bit of an introduction on you, just for our viewers and listeners to know a bit more about you. Ellie Dixon is an indie pop musician and songwriter from Cambridge, known for her witty, self-aware lyrics and creative production techniques. Starting her career by crafting music from her bedroom studio, merging pop, jazz, rap and R&B, she amassed over 1 million fans on TikTok through duets, remixes, covers, and now her own body of work. Ellie has released several EPs, including Crikey, It's My Psyche, in 2022, which explores the themes of detachment, joy, and anxiety. Her most recent work includes EP In Case of Emergency and singles like Big Lizard Energy and Renaissance. In addition to her musical talent, Ellie is known for her hands-on approach to all aspects of her craft, including directing and producing her music videos. You are an incredible talent, and as I mentioned, I've been following you for years, and it's a real honor to have you on the podcast. So welcome.
That was lovely.
How did that process start? Did you get on TikTok and immediately know, I want to share my music production stuff? Was it just super organic?
I grew up without social media, but loved YouTube back before it was a social thing. It was just a media platform, basically. And I watched a lot of YouTube, music YouTubers. So Walk Off the Earth, Pentatonix, Dodie, lots of musicians that just loved content, loved sharing, loved creating, and had the brain and facility to do it at home. And so it was a completely natural progression for me to start making videos because I loved that intersection of visual with audio and being able to just share a bunch of ideas rather than just put out an album and that is your only output. So I've just been putting videos up on YouTube forever, for 12 years now. So I've been doing it for a really long time and just loved it. But I really focused on social media when the pandemic hit because I couldn't gig, I couldn't go out and do real life things. So I just took to social media and did the thing that I've always loved doing, which is just making content. And then took to TikTok last because it was a super young platform, even for me at that point. And I was like, what are all the kids doing? I don't understand what this is. And started posting my highly produced landscape YouTube videos to TikTok. Like, the kids are going to eat this up. And just like, they bombed. I didn't understand it at all. And then I just scrolled TikTok for a while and got into the world of it. And then was like, okay, what am I liking seeing? Let's do that. But with my spin on it, basically. And the rest is history.
It makes me also wonder, how did music enter your life? Did you grow up in a very musical family? Did you learn an instrument? Like, what was your childhood introduction to music?
I've grown up around music a lot. Like, my parents were always playing music around the house. There was, I think it was river dance was the only thing that would stop me crying as a baby. So my mum would put on the river dance like soundtrack, and it would stop me crying. So I've always loved music, and my dad played piano and my mum played like tin whistle and flute and stuff. And so there was music going on in the house, and we had a piano in the house. And I think that was kind of the first thing that connected for me. Was I would just stand at like 6, I would just stand at the piano and smack it, because I couldn't believe that if I hit something it would make different notes. That was amazing. And then my parents got me piano lessons because they wanted me to hit it nicely. I very quite intense ADHD, and so like sitting down on a stool and concentrating and playing scales and stuff made my skin itch. But I loved playing the instrument, and so it was like a weird push and pull of like, I really want to learn this, but also this is so physically uncomfortable for me. And so I kind of came in and out of lessons, and I was just like joining school choirs and stuff, but it was always a very like casual relationship with music, where I just loved singing and loved sound and music and making things. So when I was about 13, 12 maybe, my dad installed this like little kind of production software on the family computer, on the family computer, the big old box on the floor. And I just would like drag and drop loops in. And again, I think just this like childlike joy of creation. I just couldn't believe I could like make anything. And so I started producing first, and then I took music GCSE because I thought, let's do more of that. And then we got like a free instrument lesson of our choice alongside it. And I'd already done piano. And so I thought, singing, you know, I can hold a note, and it's supposed to be good for lung capacity and confidence. And I was really, really shy, like really, really shy. Could barely get a note out to my teacher with any kind of confidence. And then I did a cover of Yellow by Coldplay, but I've changed the chords up a little bit on the piano, and I loved how I could take the same song but switch up the sound of it.
To suit your voice better? Or because you just thought it sounded better that way?
A bit of both. A bit of both, because I added some sevens, basically, just made it slightly more like harmonically complex, and that felt jazzier, and I think my voice suits jazz as well. So it all came together, and it was the first thing I could actually properly sing to my teacher with any confidence. And she was like, where did that come from? And then recorded it and sent it to my parents. And but she was amazing, and she's called Joanna Eden, and she was just really very like passionate about, I don't know what is it, cultivating talent. And so yeah, our lessons basically became me just coming in with like, I've written a new song, do you want to hear it? Rather than it being scales and things like that. And that really suited me, because it was lessons but not lessons. And then she started pushing me to perform and go and do open mic nights and stuff. So it was quite an organic thing that was just always me following what I liked, basically.
And did you feel like you wanted to continue with learning about music? Was like a music degree of any interest to you?
So I started music tech, which I'm really glad I did, because I learned a lot of important theory about production. And I think I preferred learning about production and like the science of audio more than I did necessarily like music theory, which felt drier to me. But then I went off and did maths at uni and didn't touch music. I didn't take it seriously again for a while, and it was just something that I would always do in my free time.
Why did you pick math?
I loved it. And there was just no essays. It was just all exams, which I loved. I just want to like revise it all, put it in my brain, get into a room, write it down, done. I really liked that.
I also like maths. I did maths A-level.
Nice.
And I come from a family of people that like maths. And I had a friend at sixth form who actually did maths and music.
Yes.
And I thought it was a really interesting combination of those two parts of the brain.
Yeah, it's more linked than you think.
Yeah. When maths becomes logic and it gets much more kind of philosophical.
Yeah.
Where that then meets with music theory is really interesting.
Yeah, it's really cool. I think because a lot of it comes down to you're being given some kind of framework to work within. That's all maths is, really. Like numbers, we're making them up. We're making up all these systems that we then buy into and then go, okay, well, what happens if we do this, this, this? And that's what music is as well. We've made our system of 12 notes and then we've said, okay, well, what's it within this? And that obviously that's just a 12-note Western scale. But, you know, I think it's, if your brain likes one thing, chances are it's going to like a bunch of other things that are very similar and span out from that.
What are your musical influences? So you listen to a lot of music. You mentioned that jazz was something that your voice suited, and what I love about your music is the humor in the lyrics. And so I'm super curious about influences and what it is you were listening to that you liked.
I think, as most artists will say, it's a massive range. But folk was always around in the house. Jazz was always around in the house. Pop was just fundamentally everywhere. So I was growing up listening to Katie Tunstall, Adele, like Adele's first album, which is still my favorite one, 19. But then this intersection with music being more than just songs. I loved Bill Bailey and Tim Minchin, and like music comedians started coming in, and Flight of the Concords, and comedy music on YouTube, like the Llama Song, and all these random little audio jokes that my ADHD brain latched onto. Anything that was like fast and funny would just absolutely like hotline into my neurons immediately, and I would be singing it right back over and over at my mum. Poor woman. But yeah, so then this kind of funny element came into it. But then I love listening to Avril Lavigne, Evanescence. Went through my My Chemical Romance phase of feeling very edgy. And then I sort of got into this, I found alternative pop, which felt like this lovely middle ground of everything. So I was listening to Easy Life and Remi and Hippocampus, and lots of artists that managed to take all these different things but still make it pop. And I love catchy melody and riffs and hooks and a beat you can dance to. And then I found artists like Anderson .Paak and Doja Cat, and that took it slightly more into a hip-hop space. And I just adored the groove and the rhythm of it. And so, yeah, it's just quite a tapestry of stuff, really. But I would say everything, one of the big common themes is everything I like seems to be very groove-led. So coming from someone that really likes rhythm, basically, I think is that intersection point. And then anything that has a blend of electronic and organic sound I love as well. So it doesn't go too far into just like a live acoustic session, but isn't like a complete like synth dance song. That meeting in the middle for me is where magic happens.
What's been your favorite thing that you've achieved so far in your kind of music career? Because you've done so much in such a short space of time.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really good question. I think one of my proudest moments was playing Glastonbury last summer.
Wow.
That was bonkers. That was a real, because I wasn't very aware of the music industry growing up. I was pretty unplugged to like pop culture, and I hadn't even heard of Glastonbury until I was like 15, which is fairly unusual. I feel like the people normally know a little bit more about festivals and music awards. I didn't know what the Brits were. I didn't know anything like that. So when I've hit a lot of these checkpoints, it hasn't necessarily had a lot of I didn't necessarily understand the scale of it until afterwards, when I've actually learned.
Because you go in a bit more naive.
Ignorance is truly bliss.
Ignorance is bliss.
It was really good when I started talking to major labels, because it meant I was not intimidated at all. Arguably, I should have been maybe more intimidated, but I would go into these coffees like, what's up? I don't know who you are. And it meant that I didn't get sold anything, because I was just like, okay, well, what can you do for me? Right. Which worked really well. But Glastonbury really was one of the things that obviously I've known about for a while, and obviously like has been a pinnacle of musical success. And so when it happened, that was one of my moments where I got to sit and go, nice, did that. And it was a pretty big tent. It was in BBC Introducing tent, and it was completely empty when we arrived, because obviously people just, as soon as there's not music on, they shift off to the next stage. And so it was completely empty in there. We were backstage, and I was like, this is going to be embarrassing. No one's going to turn up. This is going to be rough. And then it was like half an hour passed, and then we went on stage to set up, and it was rammed to the back of the tent. And
as it should be.
For Ellie Dixon. It was just, yeah, really one of those like pinch me moments of sort of like, who paid them? Like, what's in it for you guys? And those sort of moments are when you realise maybe you're doing something kind of cool that's connecting with people.
And it must be obviously with social media, you see the likes and the comments and the views and the engagement, but is there a very different feeling to when it's live in person and an entire crowd is singing your lyrics back to you that just isn't the same? Yeah. What is that difference?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think the difference is a very like human difference, because nothing can replace like realness and real people. When something's in person, you just have like a chemical bodily understanding and reaction to what's going on, because that's what we've been doing since the dawn of time, is gathering in groups. And so I think there is just a chemical height to it, and it feels the most real. But some of my biggest things I'm proud of are from social media as well, and I think it's facilitated different types of interactions that I would not have been able to have, that I don't have at shows. I can't see what someone on the other side of the world is doing, how they're listening to my music, hearing the stories about how they've connected with a song. And I got a video from a primary school in New Zealand, because they picked one of my songs as their like song of the week, and it was a school of children all singing the song, and it was literally just like me sobbing watching this video. And so stuff like that, obviously I'm having a really real bodily reaction to that, right? Yeah. But yeah, I think there's just a real energy and presence to live shows and people being there, and also it's just more commitment for someone to be
leave
somewhere.
Their house.
Oh my god, yeah,
queue,
yeah, and just everything involved in that process. It's very easy to get out your phone, like that's a much less commitment, and it still means a lot when people do it. But when someone buys a ticket, plans their day, sorts the travel, leaves the house, goes to the gig, knows the words, sings all the words, waits to talk to you afterwards, that's so much commitment. Yeah. And that means, so it means a lot more in some ways, but it also means so much that people who can't do that still get to support me and find me and engage with me. It's all lovely, just in, I guess, different ways. It's all great.
And you mentioned labels and speaking to labels. What has your journey been with record labels?
Well, it was pretty detached for most of my life because I just had absolutely no understanding of what they were or much interest really. But when I started blowing up on TikTok and Instagram through COVID, major labels started getting interested. And I have heard that major labels are a good thing. You know, I've also heard they're a bad thing, but I've heard that they're a big thing. And so I'd got my first manager at that point, and so it made sense to start having these conversations. And so as COVID started easing off, I was just going into coffees with major label A&Rs, and I ended up signing with Decca, who are a subsidiary of Universal, who are known for kind of fostering creativity a little bit more. They're not a pop label. They have like Jacob Collier and Aurora, but they started out as like one of the original like jazz and soul labels. So it felt like a really good home. And so I was with them for 2 years, which was good. And I loved the team, but it was a massive change. I was working with 2 people, and then going from 2 people to 50 people with no training in how to be a manager, because I was managing a lot of people. Even with a manager, I think it's interesting that we call artist managers, because I think that label is misrepresentative of the relationship. I think it can lead to a lot of artists being managed by their manager, and that's actually not what a manager's meant to do. You're colleagues and you're running a business together, but you have the weird thing of a manager has a lot more business acumen and understanding, because most artists, we just want to make music. And so you have quite an interesting thing where I don't think artists are ready for how much managing they have to do, especially if you want to be hands-on. And I'm quite a hands-on artist, and I care a lot about the project and how it's run. Not just, I know some artists that are like, as long as I get to make music, you guys sort it all out. But I love everything around it. I love marketing. I love just having a business. You know, it's a lot more than just making songs. And so that adjustment into that was just incredible learning. And I learned a lot very quickly, but that is exhausting doing, you know, I don't know, in any other industry, you work your way up to the point where you're managing. But as an artist, you get signed and it's like, okay, well, you should know how to run a business of 50 people. Yeah. And so I think as with any kind of first time doing anything, there's things that I think we did really well, things that I would never do again, or ways that I would work very differently to the way I did. But then out of the blue, I got dropped by the label in May. We just get a call. My manager just gets a phone call that just says, Ellie's dropped. Taking too long with the next round of music, which I wasn't at all. And it turns out that wasn't why I was dropped. And I think it was a bit of a excuse at the time, because then they had some massive internal shifts. And I think it was a funny decision to maybe blame the whole thing on me. But, you know, businesses are protecting what's going on internally at the time. And I fell apart for a few weeks. Didn't really know what to do with myself, because it's kind of all I'd known coming out of COVID. But I have 2 amazing managers, and they just said, we're going to make it work. And they joined me in January, and they've just been absolutely incredible, because they joined at kind of the most turbulent time in my career, where I was kind of still making music, and I've been playing chicken this year with how much I can hold off before putting stuff out in an industry that really values overworking and just constant output. And I had a lot of my team around me going, we could really do with putting some music out. We could really do with putting some music out. And then just seeing the rest of the industry always affirming that. It was a really weird headspace to be in, to be like, but I'm not ready. The project isn't ready. I need a rest. This isn't where I want it to be yet. The music isn't where I want it to be yet. Let's just hold off a little bit more. And it's funny, that was only 6 months.
Right.
It was just 6 months prepping a project, which is a really normal time frame. But as a developing artist on a major label, no, it's not. You know, they want you, you know, kicking these singles out back to back. But then you're not creatively developing a project that you can then nail and say something interesting with.
And they're obviously looking at it as a like this year's sales thing, whereas you as an artist are like, I want to be able to look back in decades and be proud of the albums that I've made and the work that I've created.
Yeah, and so basically what you're doing when an artist signs is you've got two businesses with completely different business models coming together to do something. And it's really interesting because it's almost like getting in a relationship with someone that has completely different life goals to you. When does that conversation happen where you both go, what do we both want and how? Versus just sort of jumping in and going, well, sky's the limit, let's go.
Presently, are you signed to another label, or are you trying to do a process of releasing this yourself with your management and maybe following a slightly different path?
Yeah, so currently we're releasing largely independently. We're releasing through Sound On, which is TikTok's kind of label and distribution service. But it's a completely different deal structure to a major label deal, or kind of any label deal. It's sort of like a distribution deal, but they give you a bit of marketing and they have analytics teams to help you out. I have personally been building an internal team of, I have a press agent, I have a radio agent, I have a playlisting agent, and all of those people are freelancers that I'm personally hiring. So I basically am kind of making my own personal label. Yeah. And it's been amazing. It's been awesome because, and I'm very lucky to be able to do it because it's not cheap. And it's me fronting the personal financial risk rather than a label doing that. And so I'm very lucky to be in that position.
But it means that you own all of your work, and it means that you've created a structure where potentially you could bring in new artists if you wanted to into this kind of label that you've created that you might like. And
it also feels so nice because when you sign to a label, you normally, the kind of main relationship you have is with your A&R. And that's the main person that you speak to before going in. But then you have a bunch of people whose 9-to-5 job it is to work for you, but also a bunch of other artists. And there's no reason why they should be the perfect person for you, the perfect person for your music, big fans of you. But when I'm hiring freelancers who've specifically reached out because they want to work with me, these people care so much. It's such a personal relationship. Last week, I actually had the whole team round and cooked them all dinner. And it was like 16 of us on a big old table, all having like roast potatoes and mulled wine and stuff. And it was just, it feels like a family. And that's the best way to work, really. And I've seen already the results are amazing. And this is without a massive infrastructure. This is without hundreds of thousands of pounds. It's just some people that really care and are incredibly good at their jobs. I've been lucky in hiring some really, really incredible people.
Well, I was also talking on this podcast recently with someone around there's having successful moments and then actually the difference between that moment being kind of almost created by somebody else, like a label being super, super heavily involved and, that song reaches #1, but how much was I really creatively involved versus taking more creative control, reaching perhaps a smaller milestone, but really feeling the ownership of that achievement.
I really resonate with that because I felt a little bit like I was sleepwalking when I first got signed because so many good things were happening that it's kind of hard to comprehend. I got a billboard in Leicester Square and it was awesome, but some part of it just like didn't connect and I was staring at it like, wow, what's happening and why? And I didn't even know they were asking for the billboard. I just got an email saying you're on a billboard.
Right.
Whereas I think the high would have been
from the whole process.
Yes, exactly.
Whereas if your team, you know how much they'd emailed for that and gotten there and made it happen, like you're in the trenches.
Yeah, if you then get a call going, we got that billboard, you know, that's a really different feeling to just getting. By the way, we got your billboard. It's still incredible, and it was such an amazing moment. But I can see the emotional difference in those two situations, even though the outcome's the same. And I think it's really made me appreciate kind of quality over quantity, and how you get somewhere is very different to just the fact that you're there, and making things having value and meaning more is so much more important than just, I got these numbers.
The fact of the thing, yeah.
Yeah,
I agree.
100%.
I actually wanted to share that you're not obviously alone in the way that labels and management and people drop you in such a disengaged way. I was with my modelling agency for 10 years, probably one of the biggest agencies in the UK. And I got a phone call. I was in New York on a job. Like, I was in New York for a job for them. Yeah. And I was in Washington Square Park, and they called me, and it was the booker that I'd had for the last 7 years, who knew when my period was, who I was dating, what I was doing. You speak when you're a model and you have a booker, you speak to them more than your mum. It's like every single day, 5 times a day. Yeah. Where are you? Are you late? Are you getting there? Like all everything. And the relationship is very much the persona of like, we're your best friend. Like, you can tell us anything, like come to the Christmas things, like come to our family barbecue, come to all of this stuff. And I was reminded in that moment how it's all just business. And he called, and the conversation was probably 4 minutes long. He said, it wasn't my choice, but we're effectively dropping you from the agency. And that was kind of it, basically. There was no, this is how we can help you do the next thing. There was no, do you want to meet in person? Do you want to have a coffee? Like, how do you feel? There was no check-in a week later. I literally, after the call, opened my phone, went on the website of the agency, and I was removed already. And there was no, here's how we'll help you find another agency. A lot of my friends they've been kept on the books until they've transitioned to a new agency. Okay. So there's no period where you're not online effectively with a portfolio. And especially back then, being a model was, if I was removed from the website, it's like my whole career doesn't exist, know, because that's the only place that it really lives on the internet in its fullness, is this portfolio on this one page on this one website
that you don't have access to the back end of, right?
Yeah, and that now doesn't exist. Obviously, they sent me, I've been collecting the photos and the clippings over the time, but I didn't have a separate website that I could just make live that had my portfolio on it. So it was a very surreal experience, but also a reminder of, they're not my friends. This was a work relationship. But I was 15 when I started and 25 when I left. So for me, it was like very personal. Modeling is described by my friend as the golden handcuff. So it was this nice thing to finally feel like I'd been given permission to leave and do something else for the first time in 10 years. Following you on Instagram, I've been loving the music, the production, the remixes, the duets, the layered harmonies that you do, where it's like, guess the track. And then you came out with this reel where you shared some of this story of being dropped by this management, of your thoughts on the industry, your issues with the speed and the quickness of things coming out. So it's the entire manifesto of this podcast, effectively. And
when you messaged me about it, I was like, oh, this is perfect.
Yeah. And so I wanted to ask a few questions about that reel specifically, and kind of dive in a little deeper and offer a sort of platform for you to share more. One of the things that you focus on is that musicians need cycles of rest. Why was rest something important for you to share about?
Because I don't see it talked about anywhere. I think it is one of the most increasingly devalued things. Rest has become something that we're selling. It's self-care now. It's like what you need to buy to look rested. We're missing the core element of it, which is just, we need rest, but prolonged rest. You don't see it anywhere, where it's kind of normalized to have a few weeks, months, and create. The thing with creativity is it is not this constant flow of ideas all the time. You have to reload And that looks different to different people. So some people might have loads of ideas one day, have a day off, that kind of thing. But I think in broader cycles, I think it's just really normal to have periods of time where you just can't write a song. It's really normal. Through my life, I've had 3 to 6 month periods where I just can't write anything I like. And I've spent a lot of time beating myself up over the fact that I work that way and that it feels wrong, or that I'm not talented enough, I'm not working hard enough because my output doesn't look like that. But I think just going to therapy has just helped a lot with that, where my therapist is great for just being like, well, that's the way you work. You know, that's the way your brain is. And just speaking to more and more artists who are all burning out, everyone's burning out, that everyone's just gagging for a break. And so I just wanted to talk about it because no one talks about it. And I was becoming increasingly frustrated because I was going to lots of panels, particularly about social media. And I feel like social media is something that I'm pretty qualified to talk about and have very strong opinions about. And on these panels, like, people were just saying, you can't take a break, you have to keep posting. I was like, what are you talking about? I didn't post for a month last month, and then I posted a video and it went mega viral. I didn't post anything for 3 months and I still came back. So I knew it was wrong. And just going to enough panels where this was starting to really clearly be quite a big thing that's getting promoted, it would just push me to make this video, because I was getting really frustrated with this narrative that is wrong. It's just incorrect.
And for artists, I think a commonly asked question is probably, well, when's the next music coming out, or what's next? Yeah. As soon as you've done something, you've created this beautiful thing that you're proud of. The interview question is always, so what are you going to do next?
I think a big reason why I became more passionate in kind of the last year was when I first signed and started putting music out, my personal life was awful. I was having a really bad personal time. I was having a lot of realizations about myself, a lot of upheaval, a lot of my personal relationships changed. I needed to move out. I was sleeping on my friend's floor. All of this was going on, and I was putting out my first single, having to pretend everything is okay while I was crashing in an Airbnb because I didn't have anywhere to live. And like having that going on, and then like wiping the tears and doing a TikTok and going, hey guys, I'm going on tour, was just so intense. And I never felt like I could opt out for a minute. And so that went on for 2 years. And so for people to be asking like, what's next, when I'm the most emotionally and physically tired I've ever been, just made me go like, wow, we need to talk about this, because I gotta be able to say I'm not okay right now. So yeah.
Do you think there are any musicians recently that have done a good job of sharing about this? Because Adele, like, big gaps between her albums. Rihanna's like known for this, like, you know, she's done an album a year for so many years, and it's like a gap. Or what happened obviously at Glastonbury of, I need a break, you know.
This is actually not a musician, but something that really stuck out to me. So there was an interview with Margot Robbie, and they were like, what's next after Barbie? Because they were like, well, that's the biggest thing, so what's next? And she just was like, I think I'm going to take a break. And then the interviewer was completely shocked. And she was like, yeah, people are going to get sick of me. They're going to get sick of my face. And I'm going to be called overrated, you know? And it was just genius. And that, I found that really inspiring. And that was kind of a turning point for me with that feeling. But I think in terms of kind of discussion of well-being within the music industry, I think it's been a breath of fresh air watching Chapel Roan's rise and seeing how much she's not necessarily talking about breaks at the minute, but she's talking a lot about headspace and protection and welfare. And it's great to see, because it wasn't talked about, especially once you hit the upper echelons. I feel like you're sort of sworn to secrecy because you're kind of owing all your success to this industry, and so you can't say anything, and
because you'll be deemed as ungrateful and privileged. And
yeah, because obviously she's super privileged in a lot of ways, and anyone with commercial success, there's a lot of privilege there, but that doesn't mean you can't talk about your own well-being, because also it has massive trickle-down effects. Massive. If someone at the top says we shouldn't be treating artists like this, that is going to affect the people at the bottom who don't have the privilege of being able to say that and be listened to. So I think it's really important that privileged people speak out, because the effect is much wider than just don't be mean to the famous person. It's don't be mean to anyone. Let's think about how people actually feel more broadly.
The other thing you mentioned is AI. The capability of AI has been depicted as the stuff of nightmares for a lot of creatives. It can write books, it can write movies, it can write songs. I now see creatives learning more of the tools of how to work with AI to make their creative things. Have you also been experimenting with it?
I love it, but obviously I'm also terrified of it. I love ChatGPT. I find it super helpful for coming up with ideas. I write a lot of like funny, for my latest campaigns, I'm like a night elf, and so I speak a lot in like ye olde English comedic, and ChatGPT is amazing for just like giving me all these like old English words and stuff that I would have just had to Google for hours, you know. So I think, like anything, like any tool that comes out, there's so much good that can be done with it. But I think something that we're missing with a lot of AI is like, and I think that we missed with maybe the internet a bit, and with any tool and invention ever, is I do think the philosophy around it should be like an essential part of the rollout of it into the world, because anything can be used for good or bad. So we should, like, you know, any household appliance comes with a list of instructions and how to use it. And I feel like that should be massively at the core of anyone using AI now. AI even being able to pose a threat to creatives is a symptom of capitalism, because that is saying that what we care about is the output. What we care about is the final product. We just care about the fact that there is art, not who made it, why they made it. That's what art actually is. You know, we don't just, all of our favorite artists ever, we know about them. You know, you don't just like them for the output. You know, the most famous thing Van Gogh is for cutting his ear off, you know, and the pain of his story, you know, like that is so intrinsically involved in his art. How he was feeling, you feel the despair and desperation, but then also the pure joy of his painting. You don't get that if AI had just generated Starry Night, you know? But
it's the context, right? That someone is looking out of an asylum window at a view and painting a thing that they see every single day. And then to know that story, to know that context makes it so much more meaningful and moving and special.
Yeah, but caring about that needs to be the cornerstone of culture. Or, AI will threaten all these jobs if all you're caring about is just selling some pictures. But that's not what art is. That's not what music is. If you're just wanting to make a song for a particular function, rather than wanting to know why someone wrote this story, what do you care about? You know, we need to like actually value the qualitative over the quantitative. It's not just the fact, it's everything else other than the fact, basically.
Yeah, I think you summarized both of these points well in that reel when you said the best art is what you have to wait for. And so care and time become what we have left of what really good art means. You're so young. I hope that you haven't already suffered from burnout and major anxiety. But if you have, what was that experience like?
I've suffered from anxiety since I was like a baby. I've had like diagnosed anxiety for a long time. And so my relationship with anxiety has been quite an interesting one that's been very changeable through just growing up, but also through my career, because it started out being, I was much more prone to panic attacks growing up, and performance. I had really bad stage anxiety, and I actually part of the reason I didn't pursue a career as an artist earlier is because I didn't think I'd be able to tour. And I thought I'd get incredibly ill from it because of how anxious it made me. But now my anxiety looks very different, and I don't tend to have panic attacks. I tend to have kind of weird suppressed spirals because I'm pushing through a lot more as an adult in the world that has to function in a lot of ways. The window of how much you can have a breakdown changes. And so I think the way everything comes out changes. But burnout has been nothing that I thought it would look like. I thought burnout would be typically looking really sleepy and really tired. I thought it would be not being able to come up with ideas. But for me, I had a really big period of burnout over the winter, and what it looked like was really low self-esteem. I was still coming up with ideas, but I hated myself, and I didn't understand that was burnout. And so it took 4 months of getting really low before I took March off this year, because I hit complete, like someone would mention the music industry and my stomach would flip. And at that point I knew there was a problem.
What did you do in that month of March? Like, what are your go-to return to yourself, grounding, re-emerging? Is it like go home, lie on the floor, or is it return to nature?
I went home to my family first thing. I think that is always grounding. My parents live like in the fields, in the countryside. So that for me is an instant calming thing. It's an instant disconnect from working and music industry and the city and everything. You know, nature is a really big one. I went to see a really old friend of mine who doesn't work in the music industry. So I just pretended that it wasn't my job for a month and was just myself again. But I waited too long to do it. And so it was not a relaxing or fun month off. It was a lot of crying. It was a lot of feeling really bad. And I think it was just really important that I let myself feel it all and got really deeply upset and really angry. And I think all of those things I had to actually just get it out my body rather than thinking, oh, well, I've got to push through today and write another song, or my label's going to drop me. That was what was going through my head.
Well, they say the only way out is through.
Truly. And then I did a little solo trip at the end of the month when I had a bit of capacity back, and I went to Amsterdam for 4 days by myself and just walked around and talked to anyone. You know, I just spoke with a lot of strangers and was just reminded of the rest of the world. I think that really helped in this tunnel vision on one thing.
Perspective is huge.
Yeah.
And being this whole thing of who am I without my work, and a reminder that you can just be a human in society and wander around and no one's expecting anything of you.
Yeah, there's not. Yeah, you inherently have value by just being here and being nice and talking to people, and that can be enough. And it's not necessarily enough to pay the bills, but those two things should be spiritually separated in your head.
You've mentioned spirituality a couple of times. I was wondering what your relationship to it is. Was that something you were raised with? Is that something you found at a certain part of your life? I don't regard myself as religious at all. Grew up in an atheist household, but my mum's very spiritual, and I think I have quite a witchy maternal line, and so I love the feeling of just everything having a flow. And I think I compare my outlook the most to Taoism, which is less of a religion, more of a philosophy, I guess, an outlook of just not messing with things too much. Everything is the way it is, and if you push too hard against the way things are, you're gonna have pushback. I also think that in our society, you're sort of born, and success is sort of defined for you in our Western capitalist system. and actually to follow the predefined linear narrative of masculine success is quite easy. It's like, go to school, study this, do this, da da. And to step out of that and define it for yourself is much harder. And so I wonder if you've, at this point, have you defined success for yourself? Have you done the soul searching of, I don't necessarily want to follow the path, have to get a label, have to do it like this? I think you've had some experiences of this. What is your current working definition of success?
I think I've been thinking a lot about this because I have got massively caught up in the typical structure. But for me right now, because it will always change, I think for now it's about being able to continually be creative, to make things, specifically to make music the most. Success is also loving the community I'm in, helping other people, bringing up my whole team with me, and having an enjoyable work environment is, like the biggest success.
Obviously, this show is about slowing down and finding ways to do that. And you've experienced the fast-paced way of things. How do you practice softness or slowness in more of your day-to-day?
Intention is like the biggest one for feeling in control. Because when the day's running away from me or I'm feeling rushed, I think so much of that is in the fact that I'm basically giving myself more than I can possibly do. And so sitting down, if I'm freaking out and going, okay, I need to do this. This is how much time this is feasibly going to take. Can I do it all today? What can be pushed to tomorrow? What can I actually do and be okay? Which feels way more in control than just, I need to get as much done as possible today. And then the other thing is just taking 5 minutes in places where I can, because there's nothing that can't wait 5 minutes, So making a cup of tea and then just watching my movements, because I think when I'm in a frantic space, even the way I'm brushing my teeth is like brushing my teeth, rather than if I'm just like, no, I'm going to brush my teeth and I notice that actually I'm going to pick this up at a normal speed. Especially with ADHD, I'm like, grab, run.
We think that we're going to get so much more done by moving frantically and quickly.
It's
either
a complete paradox.
Not as good, or you're just actually more stressed and more frantic, but you're not doing as much.
It's so weird that I get so much less done when I'm frantic than when I'm... But doing it quickly, and it still takes just as long. So I think just accepting that you can't cheat time and that it's just going to take as long as it takes makes you more present in it as well. Because if you're like, well, the next half an hour is this, so whether I like it or not and whether I do it quickly or not, it's going to probably take the same amount of time. So I'm just going to be calmer with it.
Is there any other artist or anybody else who you look at and admire the way that they have balanced their life, shown up authentically, or the way that they've grown their career path?
The people that I admire the most are my friends and the people, my colleagues, the people I work around. I've learned so much from my partner, who's also a musician and a creative director and does so much, manages to do so much, but always holds purpose and intention and community at the heart of everything. I've learned just so much from them. But I think of artists that I'm seeing, I think Orla Gartland for me is a real inspiration, because she's been working as an independent artist forever, and she manages to be incredibly successful, be incredibly in creative control, and she takes breaks, isn't go 24/7, is very embedded in her community, and is doing it herself with a lot of autonomy. I found her particularly inspiring, post-dropping and stuff, of seeing people who can be independent. I think Ray is another big inspiration for that, seeing someone who is so taken their career with both hands and guided their narrative, and taken that independent path.
I think people forget that work and what we do for a living is only a part of who we are, and there's so many other aspects. What are the other important things in your life outside of music that you think create who you are as a person, and like loves, hobbies, things, and how do you find time for them?
I love this question. Friends and family is like number one. The people you're around, and I'm a very social person, so my people. Animals and nature, really big for me. I've got 2 dogs with my parents, and they're just the best, and just whenever I see a dog anywhere, I feel so much better about life. The dream is to have one at some point, but I'm just a bit too busy at the minute. And then hobbies wise, I love making things. I love like crochet. I really like story writing, drawing, and then dancing. I love dance so much. It's the only thing that actually turns my brain off, because like exercise, like running and weights and stuff, my brain's just, it's too much space to keep thinking. But if I'm learning choreography, I can't think about anything else. So that's my favourite shut off thing.
And you said friends, family, obviously super important. What are your preferred methods for hanging out with your friends? Because I bumped into you in Finsbury Park, and I think you were going to see some friends. Yeah. What were you guys doing?
We were doing a presentation night on very stupid topics. My friends were casting all of us as different Twilight characters, and I was giving a presentation on Pitbull in a bald cap, which was great. I think anything where you're just all swapping ideas and being silly, I love. I love going out dancing with friends, and I love cooking for people. It's one of my favourite things as well, is just having people around, and I don't know, just like caring for people and being like, for tonight, you're being fed, you're being cared for. I love that.
I have a final question, which is, if I had to watch a film, listen to a song, read a book, view a piece of art that would help me understand you a little bit better, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. I have one movie that came into my head instantly. The Birdcage. It's my favourite movie. It's so funny. It's the most underrated Robin Williams movie. But this one like completely slipped under the radar, and I only found it. The Birdcage.
Never heard of it.
No, I found it like 2 years ago.
Probably a lot of Robin Williams.
Yeah, it's so funny and poignant and queer and hilarious. But basically Robin Williams is like, he runs a drag club, and his son is getting engaged, and his son's fiance, her parents, her dad is a Republican senator, and so this very like conservative couple come round for dinner, and Robin Williams has to like pretend to be a normal guy and straight, and all the drag queens come along and try and help dress the house, and it's so funny, but also you watch this relationship between Robin and his life partner, and them navigating not being able to be married because they're both men, and what that looks like. And I just the kind of emotional side of it, as well as the humor, I feel like strikes the balance of me and the way I am, and then just art as well. It's just so funny. You have to watch it.
I'm going to watch it tonight. It sounds
please.
amazing.
Oh, you'll be cackling. It's really good.
Is there anything else you feel we haven't covered that you would like to around success, slowing down, redefining growth for yourself in our hectic capitalist world? Any of the things that you didn't cover in your reel that you might like to things that you're percolating on at the moment?
That's a really good question. I always have so much to say on this. So I think if I could sum everything up, the thing that I just really want to like impress upon people so much is how much we need to care about other people, and that trickles down into everything. How we treat other people is like kind of one of the biggest things that we can control in the world. And if you're feeling hopeless, seeing the way the world is right now and feeling powerless in the face of just dumb stuff everywhere, like the most power we have is in our kind of like kindness to each other, and how much we actually care even about the people who aren't being very nice to us. How much we just, how much energy we put into the world and being a good person in the world is gonna shape the future for all of us if we keep caring and putting energy into caring. That's my political speech.
My TED Talk. Well, thank you so much for sharing. I mean, you have a speaking voice that is like your singing voice. It's so beautiful and melodic, and it's so nice.
Thank you. Thanks for having me as well. This has been really nice.
Thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in. This episode was hosted and created by me, Tiana Tambridge. It was produced by Whitney Rosenthal. Sound and video recording, mixing, editing and mastering is by Brazen Studios. Cover art designed by Natalia Ruche. Please subscribe to The Slowdown to be notified of upcoming episodes, tell a friend and leave a review, because it really helps a new podcast like this get out there into the world. And remember, we're all heading to the same destination, and there is no prize for getting there early, so we might as well slow down.